Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through another narrow maintenance tunnel. The smell of alien waste and rotting food filled his nose. He tried not to breathe too deeply as he fixed the broken pipe that had been leaking. For 3 days, the aliens who lived above him never cared about the mess they made. They just expected Jake to clean it up. The tunnel was so small that Jake had to move on his hands and knees. His blue work uniform was already dirty from the morning's tasks. Oil stains covered his shirt, and his boots were wet with things he did not want to think about. This was his life now, crawling through dirty spaces while aliens treated him like he was nothing. Jake reached the broken section of pipe and pulled out his tools. The metal was old and rusty. It would take at least an hour to fix properly. He started working, knowing that if he took too long, Commander Korthik would find something to complain about. The reptilian alien never missed a chance to make Jake's life harder. Above him, Jake could hear the sounds of important aliens walking around. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the metal floors. They were probably discussing trade deals or making plans for their next meeting. Jake knew they never thought about the humans who kept their station running. To them, humans were just tools that could walk and talk. The space station Nexus Prime was huge. It had been built by the Galactic Federation as a place where different alien species could meet and talk. Humans had only joined the Federation 2 years ago. They were still trying to prove they belonged with the more advanced species. Most aliens thought humans were too stupid and primitive to be useful for anything important. Jake finished fixing the pipe and started crawling back toward the main corridor. His knees hurt from moving on the hard metal floor. His back ached from staying bent over for so long. But he had learned not to complain. Complaining only made things worse. When Jake climbed out of the maintenance tunnel, he saw Pete Williams waiting for him. Pete was another human worker on the station. He had been there for 6 months longer than Jake. His job was to clean the alien sleeping quarters and wash their strange clothes. How bad was it today? Pete asked, looking at Jake's dirty uniform. Same as always, Jake replied. He put his tools back in his metal box. Pipe was completely broken. Probably been leaking into their food storage for days. Pete shook his head. And they wonder why their food keeps going bad. Did you tell them about the leak? I tried to tell Commander Korthik yesterday. He told me to shut up and go back to work. Side humans should not waste his time with stupid questions. The two men walked down the long corridor toward the human living area. The walls were gray metal with bright lights every few feet. Everything on the station was built for function, not comfort. The aliens did not care if the place looked nice. They just wanted it to work. Other aliens passed them in the hallway. Most ignored Jake and Pete completely. A few looked at them with disgust, like they were looking at insects. One tall blue alien with 4 arms stepped aside when Jake walked by. The alien made a face like Jake smelled bad and said something in his own language to his friend. They both laughed. Jake kept walking. He had learned to ignore the insults and the looks. Getting angry would only cause trouble. Humans who caused trouble usually got sent back to Earth. Jake could not let that happen. He had a job to do here, even if nobody knew what it really was. They reached the human quarters, which were much smaller than the alien living spaces. Jake and Pete shared a room with 2 other humans. The beds were narrow and uncomfortable. The walls were thin, so they could hear everything that happened in the rooms next to them. But at least it was clean and quiet. Linda Hayes was waiting for them in the small common area. She was the supervisor for all human workers on the station. Linda had been trying for months to get better treatment for her people. Most of the time, the aliens just ignored her requests. Jake, I need to talk to you, Linda said. She looked worried. Commander Korthik wants to see you in his office. Jake felt his stomach drop. Being called to Korthic's office was never good. News: the reptilian commander seemed to enjoy making humans suffer. Last week, he had made another human worker, Danny Clark, clean the same floor 5 times because he said it was not clean enough. Did he say what he wanted? Jake asked. No, but he seemed angry about something. More angry than usual. Linda put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Just do whatever he says and try not to make him more upset. Jake nodded and walked toward the command section of the station. The corridors there were wider and cleaner than the areas where humans worked. The walls had pictures of important Federation battles and famous alien leaders. Jake recognized some of them from his basic Federation history lessons. Commander Korthic's office was behind a heavy metal door with guards on both sides. The guards were tall, insect-like aliens with hard shells and sharp claws. They looked at Jake with their big black eyes, but did not stop him from entering. The office was large and cold. Commander Korthic sat behind a desk made of some kind of dark stone. He was 7 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes. His long tail moved back and forth behind his chair like an angry snake. When he saw Jake, his mouth opened to show rows of sharp teeth. "Human Morrison," Korthik said in his deep voice, "you have been accessing computer systems that are not part of your job." Jake felt confused. He had not used any computers except the basic maintenance terminals. Those were the only systems humans were allowed to touch. "I only use the maintenance computers, sir. I need them to check which systems need repair." Korthik stood up and walked around his desk. He was much taller than Jake and used his size to make Jake feel small and scared. "Our security systems show that someone accessed the main communication array yesterday. The access came from a maintenance terminal. You were the only human working in that area." "I was checking the power systems for the communication array," Jake said. "The power levels looked strange, so I ran a diagnostic test. I thought there might be a problem with the electrical connections." This was true, but not the whole truth. Jake had noticed something else while running his tests. The communication signals looked wrong. They did not match the normal patterns he had learned to recognize, but he could not tell Korthik about that. "Not yet. You are not paid to think," Korthik said. His voice was getting louder. "You are paid to fix broken pipes and clean floors. Nothing more. If you access systems above your level again, you will be sent back to your primitive planet." "Yes, sir." "I understand." Korthik walked back to his chair, but did not sit down. He stared at Jake for a long moment. "Humans think they are clever, but you are just animals that learn to use simple tools. Do not forget your place on this station. You exist here only because we allow it." Jake nodded and left the office as quickly as he could. The guards watched him go, but did not say anything. Jake walked back to the human quarters feeling angry and frustrated. He wanted to tell Korthik what he had really seen in those communication signals, but he knew the alien would never listen to a human maintenance worker. That night, Jake lay in his narrow bed, thinking about the strange signals. Something was wrong on the station, something dangerous, but nobody would believe him if he tried to warn them. To every alien on Nexus Prime, Jake Morrison was just another stupid human who fixed broken things. They had no idea who he really was. Jake could not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those strange signals from the communication array. The patterns were all wrong. They looked like military codes, but not the kind used by the Federation. Jake had seen codes like this before, but that was a long time ago in a different life. He got up quietly and walked to the small window in the human quarters. Outside, he could see the stars and the dim lights of ships moving around the station. Everything looked normal and peaceful. But Jake knew that sometimes the most dangerous things looked completely normal. The next morning, Jake decided he had to try again. He found Commander Korthik in the main control room, talking to other alien officers. The reptilian commander was pointing at a large screen that showed ship movements around the station. Jake waited until Korthik finished talking, then approached carefully. "Commander Korthik, sir," Jake said. "I need to report something important." Korthik turned around with an angry expression. His yellow eyes narrowed when he saw Jake. "What are you doing here, human? This area is restricted." "Sir, yesterday when I was working on the communication array, I noticed some unusual signals. They do not match normal Federation patterns. I think there might be a security problem." The other alien officers started to laugh. One of them, purple creature with 6 legs, made a clicking sound that Jake knew meant amusement. Another officer, who looked like a giant bird with metal feathers, spoke in the common Federation language. "The cleaning animal thinks it understands our communication systems," the bird-like alien said. "Perhaps we should ask it to help us plan our next battle strategy, too." Korthik's tail lashed back and forth with anger. "Human Morrison, you were told yesterday not to access systems above your level. Now you come here with ridiculous stories about security problems. Do you think we cannot protect our own station?" "Sir, I am not trying to question your security. I just think someone should check those signals. They looked like invasion coordination codes." The room went completely quiet. All the alien officers stared at Jake with shock and anger. Korthik's face turned a darker shade of green. "Invasion codes?" Korthik's voice was dangerously low. "You dare to suggest that someone is planning to attack this station? And you expect us to believe that a human maintenance worker knows more about military codes than trained Federation officers?" Jake realized he had made a mistake. He had shown too much knowledge about military systems. A simple maintenance worker would not know about invasion codes. But it was too late to take back his words. "I just thought the patterns looked suspicious, sir. Maybe someone with more training should examine them." Korthik moved closer to Jake. The alien was so tall that Jake had to look up to see his face. "You have accessed classified military communications. This is a serious crime. Security Chief Zek, arrest this human immediately." A massive insect-like alien stepped forward. Zek was 8 feet tall, with a hard black shell and claws that could cut through metal. His compound eyes reflected the light from the control room screens. He grabbed Jake's arms with his powerful claws. "Take him to Detention Cell 7, Korthik ordered. "We will decide what to do with him later. Perhaps he is a spy sent by Earth to steal our military secrets." Jake did not resist as Zek dragged him away. He knew that fighting would only make things worse. The other alien officers watched with satisfaction as the troublesome human was removed from their control room. The detention cell was small and dark. It had a narrow bed, a small toilet, and nothing else. The walls were thick metal, with no windows. Jake sat on the bed and tried to think. He had wanted to warn them about the danger, but instead, he had gotten himself arrested. Now nobody would listen to him, and the strange signals would continue. Hours passed slowly. Jake could hear sounds from the corridor outside, but he could not tell what was happening. Sometimes alien guards walked by, but they ignored him completely. He was just another criminal waiting for punishment. Late that night, Jake heard voices coming through the air vents. The detention cells were connected to the same air system as the guard stations, and sound traveled through the metal tubes. Jake pressed his ear to the vent and listened carefully. 2 alien guards were talking in the common Federation language. One had a deep voice that sounded like grinding rocks. The other had a higher voice with a strange hissing sound. "The cleansing begins tomorrow," the deep voice said. "Our ships are in position around the target worlds." "Good," the hissing voice replied. "It will be satisfying to watch the Delvari and Krex worlds burn. They have opposed our movement for too long. Jake felt his blood turn cold. The Delvarian Kreks were peaceful species that had joined the Federation only recently. They had billions of citizens living on dozens of worlds. If someone was planning to attack them, it would be genocide on a massive scale. What about the sleeper agents on the other worlds? The deep voice asked. They received their activation. Codes 3 hours ago. By tomorrow night, 17 Federation worlds will be under our control. The old Federation will be dead, and a new order will begin. Jake pressed closer to the vent, trying to hear every word. This was much worse than he had thought. The strange signals were not just about attacking the station. They were coordinating a massive rebellion that would destroy the Federation itself. The human in Cell 7 suspected something about our communications, the hissing voice said. Should we eliminate him? Commander Korthik wants to question him first. He thinks the human might know more than he admitted. After that, yes, we will dispose of him with the other witnesses. The voices moved away, and Jake could not hear any more. He sat back on his bed, his mind racing. Everything made sense now. The unusual signals were coordination messages for sleeper agents planted throughout Federation space. Tomorrow, they would activate and begin attacking from within. Billions of innocent beings would die, and nobody suspected anything Jake had. To escape and warn someone. But who would believe him? The station commander was either part of the conspiracy or too arrogant to listen to a human. The other Federation officers thought humans were too stupid to understand complex situations. Jake examined his cell carefully. The walls were solid metal, but the air vents might be large enough for him to crawl through. He had spent months learning. Every maintenance tunnel and air duct on the station. If he could get into the ventilation system, he might be able to reach the communication center. Using his belt buckle as a tool, Jake started working on the screws that held the air vent cover in place. The metal was old, and the screws were loose. After 20 minutes of careful work, the cover came free. The air duct was narrow and dark, but Jake had crawled through worse spaces. He pulled himself up into the vent and started moving toward the station's central systems. He knew the layout by heart from all his maintenance work. As he crawled through the darkness, Jake could hear alarms starting to sound throughout the station. His escape had been discovered. Soon, alien security teams would be searching every corridor and room, but they would not think to look in the maintenance areas. Humans were the only ones who knew those spaces well. Jake reached a junction where 3 air ducts met. He could go left toward the communication center, right toward the docking bays, or straight toward the main power systems. Each choice would lead to different options for fighting back against the conspiracy. The communication center would let him send a warning to the Federation fleet. But the conspirators would probably have that area heavily guarded. The docking. A's might have ships he could use to escape, but leaving the station would not help the billions of people who were about to die. The power systems could let him disrupt the station's operations, but that might not stop the larger plan. Jake made his decision. He turned left toward the communication center. Even if it was dangerous, he had to try to warn the Federation. Too many lives depended on getting the message out. Behind him, he could hear alien voices echoing through the corridors. Security. Teams were spreading out to search for him. Jake crawled faster through the narrow duct, knowing that time was running out for everyone. Jake crawled through the dark air duct as fast as he could. Behind him, he could hear alien voices getting closer. The security teams were checking every room and corridor, but they had not thought to look in the ventilation system yet. Jake hoped it would stay that way long enough for him to reach the communication center. The metal duct was hot and cramped. Jake's knees and elbows were already sore from crawling on the hard surface. Sweat dripped into his eyes, making it hard to see in the darkness. But he kept moving forward. He had memorized every inch of the station's maintenance systems during his months of work. This knowledge was the only advantage he had. Jake reached another junction and stopped to listen. He could hear alien guards talking in the corridor below. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the metal floors as they searched room after room. One of them was complaining about having to hunt for a stupid human who should have been executed immediately. Carefully, Jake continued toward the communication center. The air duct led directly over the main computer systems that controlled all messages going in and out of the station. If he could reach those computers, he might be able to send a warning to the Federation fleet before the invasion began. As Jake got closer to his target, he started to hear new sounds. Explosions were coming from somewhere outside the station. The invasion had already started. Jake felt sick to his stomach as he realized how many ships and people were probably dying at that very moment. The communication center was just ahead. Jake could see light coming through a ventilation grate that looked down into the main computer room. He moved slowly and quietly until he could see through the metal bars of the grate. 3 alien technicians were working at computer stations below. They were sending and receiving messages at a fast pace. Jake could see the screens from above, and the news was terrible. Federation ships were exploding all around the galaxy. The surprise attack was working perfectly. One of the technicians was a tall gray alien with 4 arms. He was typing commands on multiple keyboards at the same time. Jake could hear him talking to someone through a communication headset. "Sector 7 is completely secured," the gray alien said. "All Federation defenders have been eliminated. The Crux homeworld is burning." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. The Crux were peaceful plant-like beings who had never hurt anyone. They grew beautiful gardens and created amazing art. Now their entire world was being destroyed by these conspirators. The second technician was a blob-like creature that changed colors as it worked. Right now it was bright red, which Jake knew meant excitement or joy. The alien was watching a screen that showed explosions on different worlds. "The sleeper agents on Proxima Station have taken control," the blob creature reported. "They are holding 3,000 Federation civilians as hostages." The third technician was similar to Commander Korthik, with green scales and a long tail. This alien was monitoring the defensive systems around Nexus Prime. Jake could see that several Federation ships were trying to approach the station, but they were being attacked by hidden weapons. "The defense grid is working perfectly," the reptilian technician said. "Any Federation ships that come close enough are destroyed before they can discover our true identity." Jake realized that the conspirators had been planning this for a long time. They had hidden weapons around the station and placed agents throughout Federation space. The attack was not just a rebellion. It was a complete takeover attempt. Jake started working on the screws that held the ventilation grate in place. He needed to get into that room and use the communication systems. But he had to be very quiet. If the technicians heard him, they would call for security before he could send any messages. The first screw came loose easily. The second one was tighter, but Jake managed to turn it with his belt buckle. The third screw was stuck. Jake pushed harder, and the metal made a small squeaking sound. The gray alien below stopped typing and looked up at the ceiling. His large black eyes searched the area where Jake was hiding. Jake held his breath and stayed perfectly still. "Did you hear something?" the gray alien asked the others. The blob creature changed to a purple color, which meant concentration. "I heard a small noise from the ventilation system. Probably just the air circulation fans." The reptilian alien did not look up from these screens. "The human prisoner escaped an hour ago. Security teams are searching the entire station. Perhaps he is crawling through the air ducts like the animal he is." The gray alien reached for a communication device. "I should report this to Security Chief Zek." Jake knew he was out of time. He kicked the ventilation grate as hard as he could. The metal grate flew into the room and crashed into the gray alien, knocking him away from the communication device. Jake dropped down through the opening and landed on a computer console. The blob creature turned bright, orange with alarm, and started to make loud honking sounds. The reptilian alien reached for a weapon on his belt. Jake jumped from the console and tackled the reptilian before he could draw his gun. The two aliens rolled on the floor, fighting for control of the weapon. The reptilian was stronger than Jake, but Jake was faster and more desperate. He managed to get the gun away and pointed it at all three technicians. "Stay back," Jake said, breathing hard. "I do not want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to." The gray alien was getting back to his feet. Green blood dripped from a cut on his forehead where the metal grate had hit him. "You cannot stop what has already begun, human. The Federation is finished." Jake moved to the main communication console and started typing commands. His fingers moved quickly over the alien keyboard. The symbols were different from human writing, but Jake had learned to read the basic Federation computer language during his time on the station. "The invasion fleet will destroy any message you try to send," the blob creature said. It had turned dark blue, which meant sadness or defeat. "Your Federation friends are all dead or captured." Jake ignored the alien's words and continued working. He accessed the emergency broadcast system that could send messages to all Federation ships and stations at the same time. This system was only supposed to be used during the worst disasters. On the screens around the room, Jake could see the battle continuing. More Federation ships were being destroyed every minute. Entire planets were going dark as the sleeper agents took control. The conspiracy was winning everywhere. Jake started typing his warning message. He included everything he had learned about the invasion plans, the sleeper agents, and the hidden weapons around Nexus Prime. He also added the communication codes he had seen, hoping that Federation intelligence could use them to track down other conspirators. The reptilian alien started, moving toward Jake. "You are too late, human. Even if you send that message, no one will believe intelligence from a maintenance worker." "Maybe not," Jake said, still typing, "but I have to try." Jake finished the message and prepared to send it. But just as he pressed the transmission button, alarms started screaming throughout the communication center. Security Chief Zek and a team of armed guards burst through the main door. "Step away from the console, human," Zek ordered. His compound eyes glowed with anger, and his sharp claws were extended. "You have caused enough trouble." Jake looked at the transmission screen. The message was only halfway sent. If he stopped now, most of the Federation would never receive his warning. But if he continued, Zek would probably kill him before the message finished transmitting. Commander Korthik walked into the room behind the security team. His yellow eyes stared at Jake with hatred and amusement. "The mighty human warrior," Korthik said with sarcasm. "Look how far your heroic efforts have brought you. Your Federation is already destroyed, and now you will join them in death." Jake looked around the room. He was surrounded by armed aliens who wanted to kill him. The battle outside was almost over, with the conspirators winning on every front. His warning message was stuck halfway in the transmission system. But Jake was not ready to give up. He had spent too many months watching these aliens treat humans like animals. He had listened to too many insults and endured too much humiliation. Most importantly, he had seen too many innocent people die in the invasion. Jake made his final choice. Instead of surrendering, he dove back toward the computer console. If he could just reach the emergency override switch, he might be able to complete the transmission. Zek fired his weapon, but Jake was already moving. The energy blast hit the wall behind where Jake had been standing. Jake rolled across the floor and reached for the override switch. "Stop him!" Korthik shouted. Jake's hand touched the switch just as multiple weapons fired at once. Energy blasts filled the room with bright light. Jake pressed the override button and fell to the floor as electricity coursed through his body. Last thing Jake saw before losing consciousness was the transmission screen, showing message sent successfully in bright green letters. Jake woke up slowly. His whole body hurt, and his vision was blurry. He could taste blood in his mouth and feel burns on his arms from the energy weapons. For a moment, he could not remember where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came back. The communication center, the warning message, the aliens shooting at him. Jake tried to move but found that his hands were tied behind his back with metal chains. He was sitting on the floor in what looked like the same communication room, but now it was full of smoke and broken equipment. Commander Korthik was standing over him with a satisfied expression. Security Chief Zek stood nearby with his weapons ready. The 3 alien technicians were working to repair the damaged computer systems. "The human is awake," Korthik said. "Good. I want him to see the final destruction of his precious Federation before he dies." Jake looked around the room. The main screen was still working, and it showed space battles happening near different planets. But something looked wrong. The battles were not going the way Korthik had expected. On one screen, Jake could see Federation ships attacking a group of vessels that were supposed to be their allies. The Federation forces seemed to know exactly where the enemy ships would be. They were winning battles that should have been surprise attacks. "Your message changed nothing," Korthik told Jake. "Even if some Federation ships received your warning, they cannot stop what we have already put in motion. 17 worlds are already under our control." But as Korthik spoke, reports were coming in that did not match his confident words. The gray alien technician was receiving messages that made him look worried. "Commander," the gray alien said, "we are getting strange reports from the outer sectors. Several of our attack fleets are being destroyed by Federation forces that should not have been there." Korthik's tail lashed with anger. "That is impossible. Our intelligence network told us exactly where every Federation ship would be." The blob creature had turned dark red, which Jake knew meant fear or panic. "Sir, the Federation ships seem to know our attack patterns. They are avoiding our traps and setting up counterattacks." Jake felt a small bit of hope growing in his chest. Maybe his warning message had reached someone after all. Maybe the Federation was fighting back more effectively than the conspirators had planned. Suddenly, the lights in the communication center went out. Emergency lighting came on a few seconds later, bathing everything in a red glow. Alarms started ringing throughout the station. "What is happening?" Korthik demanded. The reptilian technician was typing frantically at his console. "The station's defense grid is under attack. Multiple Federation ships are approaching from different directions." "Impossible," Zek said. "Our hidden weapons should destroy any Federation ships before they get close. The weapons are not responding to our commands." The technician replied, his voice full of panic. "Someone has taken control of our defense systems." Through the small windows in the communication center, Jake could see bright flashes of light outside. Ships were firing at each other in the space around Nexus Prime. But instead of Federation ships being destroyed, Jake could see that the hidden conspiracy weapons were exploding one by one. Korthik grabbed the reptilian technician by the throat. "How did they know where our weapons were hidden?" "I do not know, Commander. The Federation ships are targeting systems that we're supposed to be secret. They know exactly where everything is located." A new voice came over the station's communication system. It was calm and professional, speaking in perfect Federation standard language. "This is Admiral Carter of the Federation Defense Force. Nexus Prime Station is now surrounded. All conspiracy forces should surrender immediately. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Jake had never heard of Admiral Carter, but the name sent the alien conspirators into a panic. The blob creature turned completely white, which meant terror. Even Korthik looked worried for the first time since Jake had known him. "Admiral Carter is supposed to be dead," Korthik said. "Our agents reported that his ship was destroyed in the first wave of attacks." The gray alien was reading reports from across the galaxy. "Commander, we are receiving surrender requests from our agents on 12 different worlds. Our sleeper agents are being captured faster than they can activate." "How is this possible?" Korthik roared. "We planned this operation for 3 years. Every detail was perfect." The station shook as something large docked with the main airlock. Heavy footsteps could be heard in the corridors outside. Jake knew that Federation soldiers were boarding the station. Zek moved toward the door with his weapons ready. "I will hold them off while you escape, Commander." But before Zek could reach the door, it exploded inward. Smoke filled the room as armed figures in Federation military uniforms entered. They moved with professional precision, their weapons trained on every alien in the room. The soldiers wore full combat armor and helmets that covered their faces. Jake could not see who they were, but he could tell from their movements that they were highly trained Special Forces troops. "Secure the room," one of the soldiers ordered. "Check for additional hostiles." Korthik, Zek, and the 3 technicians raised their hands in surrender. They knew they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Federation soldiers quickly disarmed them and forced them to kneel on the floor. The soldier who had given the orders walked over to where Jake was chained. To Jake's surprise, the soldier knelt down and started working on Jake's chains with a special tool. "Are you injured?" the soldier asked. The voice was female, and it sounded familiar to Jake, though he could not place it. "I am okay," Jake said. "Just some burns from energy weapons. Nothing serious." The chains fell away from Jake's hands. He rubbed his wrists where the metal had cut into his skin. The female soldier helped him stand up, supporting him when his legs felt weak. "You did good work here," the soldier said. "Your intelligence report gave us everything we needed to stop this conspiracy." Jake looked at the soldier's helmet, trying to see her face. "How did you get my message so quickly?" "I only sent it a few hours ago." The soldier reached up and removed her helmet. Jake gasped when he saw who it was. General Amanda Cross stood before him. She was a legend in the Federation military, known for leading the most dangerous special operations missions. Jake had read about her victories in dozens of battles across the galaxy. She was supposed to be one of the most important people in the entire Federation Defense Force, but that was not the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was that General Cross was looking at Jake with obvious respect and recognition. "Hello, Jake," she said with a slight smile. "It has been a long time since we last worked together." Jake stared at the general in confusion. He had never met her before in his life. He was just a maintenance worker. How could she possibly know him? Commander Korthik was also staring at General Cross and Jake with growing shock. "What is this? How does a Federation general know a human?" "Maintenance worker?" General Cross turned to face Korthik. Her expression became cold and professional. "Commander Korthik, you are under arrest for treason against the Galactic Federation. You and your conspirators will be transferred to a maximum security prison to await trial." Korthik's yellow eyes moved back and forth between General Cross and Jake. "This makes no sense. That human is nobody. He cleans pipes and fixes broken equipment." General Cross looked back at Jake and then at the alien prisoners. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce Colonel Jake Morrison, one of the Federation's most decorated intelligence officers. For the past 8 months, he has been operating under deep cover to investigate reports of conspiracy activity within the Federation." The room went completely silent. Even the other Federation soldiers turned to look at Jake with new respect. The alien prisoners stared at him in shock and disbelief. Jake felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. After months of pretending to be someone else, he could finally drop his cover. The mission was over, and the conspiracy had been stopped, but he also felt sad. The other human workers on the station had no idea who he really was. They thought he was just like them, struggling to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy. General Cross put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Your intelligence network provided us with detailed information about the conspiracy for months. When you sent that final warning, we were already prepared to respond. You saved billions of lives today, Colonel. Jake nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. What about the other human workers on the station? Pete and Linda and the others? They will be fine, General Cross assured him. They had no knowledge of your real mission. As far as they know, you are still Jake Morrison, maintenance worker, unless you choose to tell them otherwise. Jake looked around the damaged communication center. The alien conspirators were being led away in chains. The Federation had won this battle, but Jake knew there would be other threats in the future. I would like to return to my cover identity, Jake said quietly. There is still work to be done. 3 days later, Jake stood in the main assembly hall of Nexus Prime Station. He was wearing his old blue maintenance uniform, but everything else had changed. The hall was packed with aliens from dozens of different species, all of them watching him with expressions of shock, respect, and fear. General Amanda Cross stood at the podium in her crisp military uniform. Her voice carried clearly through the large room as she spoke to the assembled crowd. The conspiracy that threatened to destroy the Galactic Federation has been completely eliminated, she announced. 17 worlds have been liberated from the control of sleeper agents. Over 200 conspirators have been arrested across the galaxy. This victory was possible because of the brave actions of one individual. Jake felt uncomfortable being the center of attention. For 8 months, he had worked hard to be invisible and unnoticed. Now every alien in the room was staring at him. He could see Pete Williams and Linda Hayes in the crowd, looking completely confused about what was happening. The person who saved the Federation, General Cross continued, was someone who worked among you every day. Someone you all saw cleaning your floors and fixing your broken equipment. Someone you dismissed as unimportant and inferior. In the crowd, Jake could see some of the alien diplomats shifting uncomfortably in their seats. These were the same beings who had laughed at him and treated him like an animal for months. Now they were learning that the human they had mocked was actually one of the Federation's most important intelligence officers. Ladies and gentlemen, General Cross said, I present Colonel Jake Morrison, recipient of the Federation Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, and the Intelligence Star. For the past 8 months, he has risked his life to protect all of you. The hall erupted in surprised murmurs and whispers. Jake stepped forward to the podium, feeling nervous about speaking to such a large group. He had given briefings to military commanders before, but this was different. These aliens had known him as a maintenance worker, not as a decorated officer. Thank you, General Cross, Jake said into the microphone. His voice echoed through the hall. I want to start by saying that I could not have completed this mission without the help of my fellow human workers. Pete Williams, Linda Hayes, Danny, Clark, and all the others welcomed me as a friend and colleague. They made my cover identity believable because they treated me like family. Jake looked at Pete and Linda in the crowd. Both of them were still staring at him with their mouths open. Pete had always complained that Jake was too good at fixing complicated equipment for a regular maintenance worker. Now he understood why. The conspiracy we stopped was not just about destroying Federation ships or conquering planets, Jake continued. It was about the belief that some species are naturally superior to others. The conspirators thought that humans and other newer Federation members were too primitive to deserve respect or equal treatment. Many of the aliens in the crowd looked ashamed when Jake said this. They knew they had treated humans badly, but they had never thought about the bigger meaning behind their actions. I learned something important during my time working as a maintenance technician, Jake said. The people who keep our society running are often the ones who are noticed the least. The cleaners, the repair workers, the service staff. They see everything and hear everything, but they are invisible to those in power. Jake paused and looked directly at some of the alien diplomats who had been especially cruel to him. This invisibility can be dangerous when it comes from prejudice and contempt, but it can also be a powerful tool when used by those who are fighting to protect others. General Cross stepped back to the microphone. Colonel Morrison's mission began 8 months ago when Federation intelligence received reports of unusual communications and suspicious activities on several stations. We needed someone who could observe and investigate without drawing attention. Jake remembered his first day on the station when Commander Korthik had assigned him to clean the worst and most humiliating jobs. At the time, Jake had thought it was just cruelty. Now he understood that it had been the perfect cover for his real work. The maintenance worker identity was ideal, General Cross explained. It gave Colonel Morrison access to communication systems, computer networks, and private conversations. The conspirators never suspected that the human they were insulting and ignoring was actually documenting their every move. Security Chief Zek was brought into the hall in chains. The massive insect alien looked smaller and less threatening now, but he was a prisoner. When he saw Jake at the podium, his compound eyes filled with rage and disbelief. Impossible, Zek said loudly enough for everyone to hear. That human is weak and stupid. I have seen him crawl through waste tunnels and beg for mercy. He cannot be a Federation officer. Jake looked at Zek calmly. You saw what I wanted you to see. Every time you humiliated me, every time you made me do degrading work, you were helping me maintain my cover. Your contempt for humans made you blind to the truth. Commander Korthik was also brought in as a prisoner. The reptilian alien's scales had turned a dull gray color, which Jake knew meant defeat and shame. Korthik stared at Jake with hatred but also with grudging respect. How long have you been planning this? Korthik asked. How long have you been lying to us? I never lied about who I was, Jake replied. I really did fix your broken pipes and clean your floors. I really did crawl through those waste tunnels and endure your insults. The only thing I did not tell you was that I was also gathering intelligence about your conspiracy. General Cross activated a large screen that showed images and documents. From Jake's investigation, there were photos of secret meetings, recordings of private conversations, and copies of encrypted messages between conspirators. For 8 months, Colonel Morrison documented the conspiracy's plans and identified its members, she said. His intelligence reports allowed us to prepare countermeasures and position our forces to respond when the attack began. The screen showed a map of the galaxy, with red dots marking the locations where sleeper agents had been captured. There were hundreds of dots across dozens of worlds. The conspiracy had been much larger than anyone had imagined. Without Colonel Morrison's work, General Cross said, this conspiracy would have succeeded. Billions of innocent beings would have died, and the Federation would have been destroyed. Jake stepped forward again. I want to make something clear to everyone here. This mission was not about proving that humans are superior to other species. It was about proving that every person has value, regardless of their job or their species, or how others perceive them. He looked around the hall at the mix of alien faces watching him. The Federation is stronger when we work together as equals, when we respect each other and listen to each other, even when someone seems unimportant or different. After the ceremony, Jake walked back to the human quarters with Pete and Linda. Both of his friends were still trying to understand what they had learned. I cannot believe you are actually a colonel, Pete said, shaking his head. All those times. You complained about fixing the same broken systems over and over again. I thought you were just a guy who was bad at his job. Linda laughed. I always wondered why you knew so much about computer systems for a maintenance worker, and why you never seemed bothered by the way the aliens treated us. The aliens' treatment was actually helpful for my mission, Jake explained. The worse they treated me, the less they suspected I was anything other than what I appeared to be. When they reached their quarters, General Cross was waiting for them. She had changed out of her formal uniform and was wearing casual Federation clothing. Colonel Morrison, she said, I have new orders for you. Federation Command wants to expand the deep cover program. We need experienced officers to train the next generation of undercover operatives. Jake thought about the offer. He could return to a normal military career with respect and recognition for his work. He would never have to crawl through waste, tunnels, or endure insults from arrogant aliens again. But he also thought about all the threats that might still be hidden in the galaxy. There could be other conspiracies forming, other dangers that only an invisible person could detect and stop. I would like to stay here, Jake said finally. Return to my maintenance duties and continue monitoring for new threats. But I also want to help train other operatives for similar missions on other stations. General Cross smiled. I hoped you would say that. The galaxy needs people like you, Colonel. People who are willing to be invisible heroes. 1 month later, Jake was back in his blue maintenance uniform, fixing a broken water recycling system in the lower levels of the station. But now everything was different. The aliens he passed in the corridors nodded to him respectfully. Some even said hello and asked how his work was going. Commander Korthik had been replaced by a friendly, dolphin-like alien named Commander Reef. The new commander made sure that all workers, human and alien alike, were treated with dignity and respect. Jake had also started training 3 new human operatives who would be sent to other stations. They were learning how to blend in as janitors, food service workers, and equipment technicians. Like Jake, they would be invisible heroes protecting the Federation from hidden threats.